This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. Our aim is to inspire and educate you. I'm your host Maxine Bell for this final episode in our Team Coaching series. Now, Georgina Wostrow and Ala de Jong have given a fantastic introduction to team coaching in the previous 6 episodes, but today I am joined by Declan Woods, who is the Association for Coaching's Global Head of Team Coaching, Standards and Accreditation, and leads the AC's work on team coaching. He is a top team coaching psychologist and the CEO of Team Genie, a company specialising in designing, coaching and developing teams. Welcome, Declan.
Thank you, Maxine. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Team coaching seems to be your thing. How did that all start for you?
Yes, well, I guess like many coaches, I've been working with teams in different guises for a number of years. But the actual coaching of teams was a natural extension, really, to the work that I've been doing for several years, coaching individual senior leaders. And often that work with leaders led to me being invited to work with them and their teams as well. So in one sense, it was a natural extension of that, but also it was also a sort of almost a return full circle of some of the work that I'd done earlier in my organisational career, where I'd both been working in organisations and working as an external change consultant, both with organisations as a whole, but also with sort of significant parts of them, including teams. So that shift from individual to team really was a sort of a homecoming, really, I guess, of the work that I'd done before. Albeit in a slightly different way, and sort of underlining the sort of coaching element of working with teams rather than maybe sort of guiding or consulting with them or even leading them as a line manager. So,
and when did you join the Association for Coaching? As the sort of leading the team coaching element of what we do.
Yeah. So I guess there's a 3-part answer to that. One is I joined the AC not long after it first launched. So 20 odd years ago. Not long after that, I then joined the AC as a volunteer, and that led to me taking on a sort of succession of roles in the area of standards and accreditation. And I guess what's important for me there is as practitioners, as doing really sort of high quality work, because I think our clients, whether they're individuals or teams, really sort of deserve that. So as you know, I've had a succession of those type of roles, co-designing, creating sort of competency models, accreditation schemes for individuals. And so again, there was a sort of gap in the AC's lineup in terms of accreditation for not only team coaching programs, but also coaches that will also coach teams as well. And so it was that gap that led the AC to invite me back to contribute in this area. And it was really, I think, the work that I've been doing over several years now with groups and teams in organisations. They're a real area of sort of passion for me. I love the sort of complexity, the sort of messiness, all of that comes with teams. And so it was really that sort of body of experience, and really coming at this as a practitioner that then led me to become involved with the AC's work in this area.
Yeah, it's really lovely to hear your passion for it. I always like it when people are really passionate about what they do, because it means you bring so much to what you're doing anyway. Now, today you're here because there's an exciting opportunity coming up for team coaches led by the Association for Coaching. So would you like to tell our listeners more about that?
Yes, I mean, I'm delighted to say that after about 3.5 years of work, we're poised and almost on the point of launching the Team Coach Accreditation Scheme. So that's hugely exciting. I mean, you'll remember that in May last year we introduced the team coaching competency model to bring a bit more clarity to that type of work with organisations and coaches. And so this is a sort of follow on from that. This was another piece of that jigsaw. And so a huge amount of work by a whole number of different people involved in this. And so I'm really pleased to say that we're almost at the point of launching this. So 3rd of April is when we go live with this. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work has gone into it. Why is it so important to you to have a team coaching accreditation scheme?
Yeah, I guess there were sort of two drivers behind it, really. I said earlier that the AC had a number of accreditation schemes already, whether they were for coaches working with coaching individuals, whether that was coaching supervision or leader as coach. So the AC had a number of schemes, but the AC didn't have a scheme to reflect practitioners' work in team coaching. So this was a gap, and really the AC was getting a number of requests, both from individual members, so coaches and practitioners, but also its corporate and organisational members, about, well, what's the AC's interest, what's the AC's point of view about teams and how we work with them and team coaching. And so we've got these twin set of drivers for this. One for, as I say, organisations that were doing more and more work with teams and looking to support teams at work. And what they were really asking for was some clarity. How is this emerging thing called team coaching, how is that different from, say, facilitation or team consultation or team building? And they were looking to make sense of that, and were looking, not surprisingly, to the AC as a professional body for a bit more clarity on that. And secondly, our members, so practicing coaches, primarily with individuals, but either they were looking to get some form of professional recognition for the work that they're already doing with teams and groups, and in a way that reflected that practice, but also for practitioners and members that were starting to or thinking about working with teams and groups. Again, they were also looking for a bit more guidance about, well, what is this thing called team coaching, and how is it similar to or different from individual coaching, for example? So they were looking for a bit more guidance on that, really, and then they could make a more informed choice about whether they extended their work into that area. So it's really those two sets of drivers, both organisational and members, that really started the AC to think about this as an area of work. And then that was 3.5 years ago, and a huge amount of work from a huge number of people to get to the point now that we're about to launch. And I can tell you what's in store in a moment. So yeah, but that was really the sort of the journey we've been on.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, 3.5 years, that's an awful lot of work. So would you like to give our listeners an overview of what the Team Coaching Accreditation Scheme is and what it involves?
Yeah. So sort of two halves of the same thing. One is a scheme to accredit training providers' programs, so programs that equip practitioners with the knowledge and skills and competencies to be able to work with teams. So one is an accreditation of those programs to give some third-party assurance around the quality of those programs, and the other part of that is the professional recognition of individual team practitioners and the work that they do coaching teams, to recognise their practice. So there's sort of two halves of the same thing. One is to recognise programs, the other is to recognise the individual, and clearly those two things are related. But that's essentially what's being created here.
Yeah, and I think it was mentioned in the AC20 series we did that the process of accreditation allows coaches to really have a lot of reflection to see exactly where they're at, what they need to learn. So how is the accreditation scheme going to help team coaches? Why do it?
Yeah, the first thing is, I think, coaching and including coaching teams can be quite an isolating or individual experience. And so the first thing is that it's hopefully brought a bit of clarity to people's practice. It's maybe worth saying something about the design principles. One of the design principles was that we created a genuinely global standard. So in doing that, I interviewed dozens and dozens of coaches from across the different AC regions, from multiple different countries. What we're really trying to do is sort of lift the bonnet on practice and have a look at what was the work that was being done with groups and teams, and really try and get some clarity on that and how that might have varied or differed across the different regions and markets, and then build up a sense of that, so that whatever the AC then created was a genuine reflection of the variability of practice across the globe, recognising that at the same time team coaching is still in its relative infancy, and so it's come a long way in a very short space of time, and will continue to evolve. And so we wanted to capture that richness of practice from across the different markets and reflect that in what was created. So that was one of the sort of design principles behind this, that was that we created a genuinely global standard.
Yeah, that's really, I think, reassuring for people to hear that you did that amount of research globally to make sure that the accreditation scheme would cover all of the aspects that different team coaches are facing. So, yeah, that's really interesting. But what's different about the Team Coaching Accreditation Scheme from the point of view of Association for Coaching? Why would coaches choose to do it with us?
Yeah, so a number of reasons, and I think at the heart of this is about fitness to practice. It's about the practice, the practical elements of coaching a team. So I think that's the first thing. So this is not about theory per se. It's not about knowledge per se. It's about practice and being able to work practically with a group or a team in a room. So that's the first thing. So yes, clearly there is some underpinning knowledge and some theory in that, but it was very much about the application of that, both to the understanding of what might be going on with the team, but also to what we then do with that understanding and how we work with that. So that's perhaps one area. And of course, there are different people that have a perspective on that fitness to practice. One of those, of course, is the team coach or practitioner, him or herself. They'll have a view of the work that they've done and be reflecting on that, to use your earlier phrase. But so, of course, will the team itself, including the team leader. They will have a view and a vested interest in that practice. So they'll have a perspective, as will the coaching supervisor. And so what we have tried to do here is take a multitude of perspectives on the work that is done from both the coach, the client, and the team, and the supervisor's perspective, and bring all those together to say, well, what does this team need right now, and what's the best way of responding to that as a team coach, and do some practical work. So that's one perhaps quite significant piece, this emphasis on fitness to practice. But I guess there's a couple of other things as well. So we're very much interested in coaches that can work with and respond and be flexible in that response to a team and how that team's needs change over time, rather than sort of knowledge per se. So there's no sort of theoretical exam in this, no sort of written exam or that type of thing. It is very much about fitness. But also we wanted to make this inclusive as well. And so we thought long and hard about this. And so we made a deliberate choice to open the gates to this, so that we weren't asking practitioners to already be accredited as a coach before they entered this. And that's not to say that core coaching skills aren't important, because they are, and they're absolutely critical. So I think one of the aspirations here was to underline the coaching in team coaching. And so there's a bedrock of core coaching skills, whether they apply to individuals or teams, but those skills lend themselves to teams. So yes, there was that sort of coaching element in it, but we wanted to remove that as a sort of barrier to practitioners that maybe were working predominantly with teams and maybe had done less practice. And so rather than creating this sort of artificial barrier around individual accreditation, we believe that the approach that we have will still allow coaches to demonstrate their core coaching skills, but without putting that sort of hurdle in there. So that's a bit different as well.
So just on that note, so who is this scheme for then? Is it for new team coaches? Is it people interested in team coaching? Can you explain that a little bit more? Yeah,
so there's two audiences really, depending on the accreditation that's sought. So let's take the accreditation of programs. So this is for providers of coach training. So either those that are currently offering training for practitioners to work with groups or teams, but also for training providers that are thinking about that. Maybe their programs so far have either been on training coaches to work with individuals, or maybe providing some coaching supervision. Maybe they weren't offering something to do with teams, and so this would create that possibility for them, and hopefully provide some clarity for them, particularly around the competency model about what this thing called team coaching is. So that's one market for this. The other market for this is the individual practitioners, and so one difference here is that unlike the individual Coach Accreditation Scheme that has 4 levels. The Team Coaching Scheme has 3 levels. And the reason for that difference is that it's really back to that point I made a minute ago about team coaching still being in its relative infancy, still evolving in terms of a body of practice. And so there are still things that we're perhaps less clear on, or that are still emerging. And so what we wanted to do was create the possibility to adapt the scheme over time as we got clearer on the differences, and this work sort of matures and evolves. And so that's the other thing to say about this. So there's the individual scheme. That's 3 different levels of practitioner, right the way from those that have maybe some experience, maybe particularly those that have started out, or their experience has been maybe more with groups rather than teams, but nonetheless do a lot of work in that area and want to get some recognition for that. And then the other 2 levels are for practicing team coaches and for master team coaches. So those that a much more dedicated part of their practice is to working with teams and so forth. So three levels. So really something that should appeal and provide the opportunity for accreditation for a range of practitioners, whether they've maybe done some coach training recently and gone into practice, or maybe those that have been doing this for a while but maybe predominantly with groups. So there's a level 1 accreditation for them, but equally for those that are either have been doing this for a significant period of time, or a lot of work more recently with teams, then there's a level 2 and level 3 accreditation that should give recognition to that sophistication of practice.
Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit more about what's involved, just on a practical level, the time commitment and other things that you'll expect for this?
Yeah, the time commitment question is a question that comes up quite a lot. It's and that's always a difficult one to answer. Maybe if I answer this in this way, in terms of how somebody thinking about this might go about preparing. Well, the first thing to do is obviously have a look at the scheme and the requirements. But I think what can also help is if you're organised and have things like a record of your training that you've done, a note of your team coaching supervision, a bit of a log of your sort of practice hours, that sort of thing. If you've got those things at your fingertips, or if not, then at least accessible, then that can cut down quite a lot of work in providing the sort of basic information that reflects the your practice. So that's the first thing. There's some core information that actually, if you're just organised and have a that available to you, then that will help. I think the other point of difference is, and this really reflects the point about not wanting to place the emphasis too much on theory, is that we've tried to keep the amount of written work to a minimum, and that really reflects the emphasis on practice rather than knowledge per se. And so at the heart of this, one point of difference is that we're inviting the providers of team coach training to partner with the AC to observe practice, and this is something that the quality coach training providers are doing anyway, much the same as they do with training individual coaches. They maybe teach and give some input on some of the competencies and some of the core skills and capabilities for coaching, put them into practice, observe that practice, maybe give them some feedback on that. And so that is an approach we're applying to team coaching as well. And so one point of difference is that we're asking training providers to partner with the AC to share with both some of their students, some of their trainee team coaches, some of those observations on their practice, because we take the view that team coaches get better through knowing some stuff, putting that into practice, getting some feedback on that practice, having another go, getting a bit better at it. And so team coaching is very much a sort of contact sport. And so it's we get better at it through practice rather than and reflecting on that practice. And so we wanted to reflect that in the sort of design and the sort of delivery of the scheme. So that's the link between the team coaching providers part of this and the individual's practice part of this.
Yeah, I mean, as you've been talking, you've kind of touched on some of the benefits of undertaking the accreditation scheme. But was there anything else you'd like to say about, what the benefits are for coaches to do this, how they will, grow from it, which I guess is the goal ultimately, and become better team coaches?
Yes, that's right. I think we're I think at this stage, as we're pre-launch, it's not possible to sort of gauge the impact that this has made on individuals in their practice. Although clearly the aspiration is that it will improve practice. One of the design principles is that this is developmental. So rather than the emphasis being on sort of assessment per se, we think one of the design ideas behind this is that through the process of going through accreditation and thinking about your practice, of unraveling it, having a look at it, making sense of it, reassembling it, and then being able to articulate that to clients in a very coherent way, we think should be developmental in itself. So that's one potential sort of benefit. The other benefit, of course, is particularly by virtue of having 3 levels, is that it creates a pathway. It allows practitioners at different points in their team coaching career, whether they're relative newcomers to this or more seasoned practitioners, to be able to gain recognition, but also to think, how do they then stretch their practice? What's the edge of their practice, and how might they look to evolve that? And so the 3 levels provides the opportunity for that. And we also take the view that even those that might be thinking about accreditation at the master coach level often still have developmental work to do. So I think that's another benefit here, that there are different levels, and so it should be possible for practitioners to seek accreditation almost irrespective of the level of their practice. We know from the individual accreditation scheme, and having interviewed a number of coaches that successfully went through that and interviewed them a time later, that they reported just that they had got a lot of developmental benefit from this. But particularly, and perhaps this one of the themes that came out of that was that it really increased their confidence. That process of examining their practice, reflecting on it, tightening up on certain areas, adding other bits into it, and then bringing that together into a coherent whole. That sort of process really boosted their confidence, and they felt that their confidence was reflected in the work that they're able to do with clients. And so I would expect that to be the case with those that seek team coaching accreditation as well.
Yeah, I mean, confidence is such an important thing, isn't it? Especially with teams, when you're walking to a room with different personalities and you're having to kind of juggle and support that. I was also just thinking about what you said about impact, because in our previous episodes, Georgina and Allard have a personal view. It's not necessarily the AC's view that the future of coaching is team coaching. So, and you've mentioned that team coaching is in its infancy. For you personally, what the impact of team coaching? What do you imagine that could be in the future coming, and and why the accreditation scheme is part of that? Why that's important? Just on a general view, of the impact of team coaching in the world and how you see it in the future.
Yeah. I guess one of the frustrations of working with an individual is that we take them out of context, work with them, they then return to their work context and carry on. And so the work we do is inevitably in and out of that individual, rather than with working with a bigger part of an organisational system. Team coaching, of course, has the possibility, by virtue of working with a much bigger unit and part of the organisation, that we're working more systemically by nature of the work, and so it has almost by default the potential for greater impact. So I think that's one of the hugely sort of exciting areas of team coaching, and it's got huge potential as well, not only to work with one team, but to work with team on teams and multiple teams as part of the same system. And then we're intervening and doing some sort of genuine organisational development work at a much different level of the organisation. And it creates the possibility to have much greater impact, I think.
Yeah, and I guess when you work with a team, I mean, I'm not a team coach, so forgive my ignorance, but you're dealing with some of the underlying kind of psychology and things that are going on always in a team but aren't spoken, but coaching maybe allows that to come out, and that would require a degree of confidence from a team coach, obviously, to manage that and to be able to to clear up some of the mess that can be sitting there underneath for a team to do the work they need to do.
Yes, and I love that word mess, because teams are messy, they're complex, they're edgy, they're scary, and often all of those things at the same time. And so teams have this uncanny ability to find our Achilles heel as practitioners and draw us in and pull us off track and all of those sort of things. And so finding ways to sort of look after ourselves and maintain our presence and confidence can be really critical in the service of the team. And so hopefully what we've done with this accreditation scheme is recognise that complexity and that messiness. And what we're really hoping is that it equips practitioners to come out of this and to face into that complexity, that messiness, with a much higher degree of confidence, having done the work and the thinking in parallel perhaps to working with a team.
An accreditation scheme as well is going to improve your own self-awareness, because when you walk into a room for any coach or even on a one-to-one, there will be certain triggers within yourself that can become that Achilles heel. So I guess going through a scheme like this, you're going to improve that element as well, your own self-awareness and areas that you need to keep an eye on.
Yes, that's right. And what really came out very clearly from the interviews that I conducted was that not only was supervision important, but actually it was absolutely vital. And so there can be some ambivalence around that on the part of coaches, but that very much wasn't the case with the team coaches and practitioners that I spoke with as part of the design and creation of the competency model, standards and scheme. They were really sort of shouting very loudly about the criticality of that and the support that provided, both to help them make sense of and gain some insights as to what might be going on with the team, but also about them in relation to the team. So that's very much a part of this accreditation, and really as a response to the centrality of that came from the conversations that we had with practitioners.
I mean, the scheme has been thoroughly researched. You've put an awful lot of hard work and thought into doing this, Declan. So you've mentioned some things that people can do to start to prepare, like being organised. Is there anything else that you would advise our listeners?
Yeah, I think there's a few other things. So one is to think about their practice. How would they describe their practice to a team that they might be working with, and to write it down? Because one of the things that we're interested in is how team coaches articulate their practice to a client. So there's what a client might request, and then what we're willing to offer in return to meet that request. And so being clear on my particular stance, my philosophy as a team coach, and what informs that practice can be really helpful, not only as part of our confidence in what we're willing to offer, but also as a response to see, actually, are we in the best place to help a particular team? And we may not be. A team may not be ready for team coaching, and equally, we may not be the right team coach. So I think that's the first thing or one of the first things that a team coach could do is really think about how they would articulate their practice and what makes them different. What would be different for me as a team coach, and what would a team be getting, and how might that be different from you or somebody else, for example? So that would be one thing. Another thing to do would be to think about who might I approach as a referee, who might act and be willing to give us a reference. So which team or teams are we working with that could do that? And I should say that we're not looking for perfect practice. I'm not sure there is any such thing with working with the teams. They're just too complex for that. What we're interested in is a reflection of somebody's work, and actually I think being able to make sense of that complexity and then think through it, to muddle through it with the team, and then to be able to say, actually, this is why I intervened in the way that I did, and so forth. So I think the references can be an important part of that. Maybe another thing that's worth saying is a lot of what we've talked about so far has been a snapshot of team coaching, so a piece of team coaching over time. Whereas, of course, we know that like individuals, teams mature and develop over time. And so one element of the accreditation is to look at a longitudinal piece, or a piece of work with the team from beginning, middle, and end, rather than a sort of a part of or a snapshot of. And so again, what we're asking practitioners to do is to tell us a story about that, to write a case study about that, about what was the first thing that they encountered with the team? What did the team present with, and how did that differ from the core of the real agenda that the team may have wanted to work on? What sense did they make about it, and how did that inform how they chose to work with that team? What was the work that actually took place? And then, to use your word, what was the outcome? What was the impact of that work? And then how did the team get some clarity on that? What sort of evaluation or sort of review of practice was there? So that's one of the pieces of this, a sort of case study, and this is one of the few pieces of written work in this, a sort of a reasonably short sort of case study of a whole piece of team coaching from beginning, middle to end. And so again, practitioners thinking about accreditation should think about what are the teams that they've worked with, which team would allow them to demonstrate their sort of work in its fullness. So that would be something else that they could do.
And I mean, this scheme sounds fabulous, and I'm starting to get a real sense as well for the conversation, because as I mentioned, I know very little about team coaching, but also I'm starting to get a sense from you about the potential impact of this. And I just wondered if you wanted to say a few words for people that aren't maybe team coaching yet, but are thinking about it. What would you want to say to those people?
Yeah, I would certainly say consider it. And teams are fascinating and hugely exciting. And as a practitioner, the thing that led me to working with teams and has kept me working with teams is they keep me on the edge of my seat. So that's hugely exciting. And so I would say be open-minded about it and think about it. And I think we've seen organisations put the focus on teams increasingly over the last handful of years, and not surprisingly, what follows that is organisations thinking about, well, what's the support available for a particular team, and what provision can we make for that? And so I'm imagining that there'll be more and more demand for this work, and organisations looking for practitioners to support them in this. And so, as you can probably tell, I'm a huge advocate of work with teams, and I think this is the future of team coaching. I think for those that are not sure, I would say join one of the webinars that are coming up. We've got a number that are being scheduled, and so there are various communications that are coming out shortly. And so, if you're in any way interested or curious about this as a body of work, irrespective of whether you've decided at this point to commit to become accredited, I would say join one of those webinars to find out more.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. That's and watch out for those. We'll be putting them out on our social media channels for this and the accreditation scheme. So, how do our listeners find out more about it?
Well, as I said, we go live on the 3rd of April. There's some information on the AC's website already. So there's information on the outline of the scheme and the competency model. So that's available now and very accessible on the AC's website. We've got a whole number of other things. So there'll be a press release coming out shortly. There are various emails that. Bulletins that will come out from sort of mid-March onwards. Some of those will be signposting webinars, and so we've got dedicated webinars for coach training providers. We've got dedicated webinars for individual AC members, and we've scheduled them across different days of the week, different times of the day to make them accessible for almost irrespective of where you're based and your sort of working pattern. So a whole number of different things, and then as you would hope and expect, there are some guidelines there as well that are available for you to have a look at and allow you to make a more informed choice about this thing called Team Coach Accreditation.
Yeah, and of course we'll put links to everything we can in the show notes as well for our listeners. So do connect to the website, and you'll find all the links on the podcast channel as well. So thanks very much, Declan. Is there any sort of final words you'd like to say before you leave today?
Well, I'd like to say a couple of things. One is, first of all, there's been a whole number of people that have been involved in this, including the practitioners that we spoke to, that were willing to talk about their practice. So thank you to them. Thank you to those, both practitioners, to coach training providers and others that have given us some feedback along the way. The feedback has been really encouraging, has allowed us to sort of keep up the momentum with this. So I'm confident that we're definitely on the right path with this, and the feedback that we've had. A lot of the feedback, the sort of essence of it is that it's inclusive, it's clear, and it's practical. So that's all in the sort of spirit of what we were hoping. So thank you for those that have provided the feedback. I think maybe a final point is that we're excited about the launch of this, and so lots of opportunities to find out more. So do take advantage of those and join one of the upcoming calls.
Yeah, thanks, Declan. I mean, I think our listeners, it's been very clear how much thought has gone into this on all levels, and that's really come across. So thank you very much, and good luck with the launch, Declan.
Thanks, Maxine.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
a lot.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insights from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.